Okay, let's return to one of our top stories this morning in Venezuela, where opposition leader Maria Corina Machado is calling for nationwide rallies to be held to denounce the disputed re-election of President Nicolas Maduro. We're going to try to reconnect with Professor Nicolas Forzans. He's co-director of the Centre for Latin American and Caribbean Studies at the University of Essex. I think you're joining us by phone this time, Professor. As I was asking you there just a little earlier, do you believe that Maduro can be persuaded at this point to release vote tallies following last Sunday's election?
Good morning, and apologies for the problems we experienced. I think it's going to be a big ask, because if we were to do so, it would be unable to evidence his legitimacy. We know the opposition has ownership of the tallies, the voting tallies, for around 80% of the polling stations, and we know what the result shows. So Nicolas Maduro will never release the results, blaming a cyber attack, which prevents him, at least officially, from releasing the results. But it's not in his interest to do so. The opposition has been very successful in evidencing its international legitimacy, and even maybe more importantly, legitimacy within Venezuela. You could see protests starting on Monday, spontaneous protests from Venezuelans who accept the legitimacy of the opposition. And those protests have increased over time since Monday morning. And the people in Venezuela are convinced of the victory of the opposition. The international community is also convinced of the opposition's victory. And so everything will depend on the attitude of the military in Venezuela.
And Nicolas, those protests have been taking place even in areas that were previously loyal to the regime. Will the popular anger that we're seeing on the streets have any impact on what happens next?
I think that's the big question. We could see protests, including in working-class neighborhoods in Caracas, that historically supported the movement of Hugo Chavez and Nicolas Maduro. And those people have no longer faith in that political movement. So the question is about the military, I think, and in diplomacy. In terms of the military, we know the military is deeply embedded in all aspects of the government in Venezuela. And people at the top of the military have an interest in keeping Maduro in power. But the rank and file in the military, that's questionable. The second issue is about international diplomacy. And we can see efforts by Colombian President Gustavo Petro, Lula of Brazil, trying to convince Maduro to step down from power. And we know there are negotiations, including the United States, in order to reduce the cost of stepping down from power. We need to remember there is a $15 million bounty on the head of Maduro issued by the U.S. Drug Enforcement Agency for alleged corruption and drug trafficking charges. So if we were to move forward with Venezuela, I think the cost of stepping down from power has to be reduced, and that will happen through negotiation and diplomacy. But at the same time, the attitude of the military will be critical in the days to come.
Nicolas, we'll have to leave it there for now. But thank you so much for joining us and for reconnecting with us there. That is Professor Nicolas Forzans. He's co-director of the Centre for Latin American and Caribbean Studies at the University of Essex in the UK.